to grow in innovation, you need a thriving communities, companies that are growing, that bring talent, but you also need that talent is inclusive. I think that there has to be work among, community leaders and, C-level people and founders to be purposeful about that inclusion. And it is clear, I think, throughout the years that inclusion and diversity drive innovation.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, creators, and disruptors who are changing the way that business happens. My name is Tyler Kelly. I'm here with my co-host, Leanne Buchanan.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, hello. And today we're very excited because we're joined by Laura Maydon.
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Awesome. Well, Laura, I know you, and I'm excited that we're able to sit down because the folks that don't know, you're a business advisor, you are an investor, and you're a business leader. Like, you have such a deep background in business. But I want us to introduce you in a different way. Start off by telling us, what are you passionate about?
Wow. Well, I'm passionate in general, very broadly, about helping people. Mm-hmm. And I think that my past experiences show that. I love helping entrepreneurs, and that's why I am an advisor. I try to be. But, recently, the last year, I've been thinking a lot about purpose. And I am passionate about helping specifically women across the board, and also Hispanics and minority groups, right? Because the more and more I think about it and learn about it, the more I think we need to do to help them grow to their full potential, like we did, yes, or we are doing.
And so your background is quite varied. You right now sit on the boards as an advisor to Novo Payment and Sustalytics, and you're the co-president of the Harvard South Florida, HBS South Florida club, but you also are the former managing director of Endeavor, which I think was probably the first endeavor outside of Latin America, right here in Miami. So with all of that experience, talk to us about how you identify the right types of companies that you really feel like you can be helpful to.
I consider myself a generalist, so I don't worry a lot about industries. Of course, you want to be in the industries that are growing and thriving, but I think that entrepreneurs in general can turn around any industry. My main focus is on the entrepreneur personality, because that's what's going to make it or break it. Entrepreneurs that have the drive, that are willing to listen to others, that are willing to adapt and be flexible. I think those are the entrepreneurs that I enjoy working with. And of course, the ones that think big as well.
So I want to take a step back and have you talk through what got you here. And here is, I think, in a place of reinvention, a little bit of transition as you've recently left Endeavor, but you've also had time at Visa. So talk to us briefly, like how your origin story got you to where you
journey.
Are. Yeah.
I grew up in Mexico City. I went all the way through university there. And, I was lucky enough that my father had studied a PhD at MIT. So growing up for me, it was just natural to continue to postgraduate studies. And that's, very young, honestly, and with minimum experience. Fortunately, I got accepted into the MBA of Harvard Business School, and that's what brought me to the US. That completely changed my focus. I was an economics major. I thought I was going to do other things, and I ended up on the private equity side of the business. And so I started my career as on the investor side, focused on Latin America most of my career, and in one of the crises that happened in Latin America. The fund closed, and that's what brought me to Miami. So a business leader, Annette Frankie, who was my first woman boss, brought me here, and I was very excited because of that. You know, throughout my career, I had only worked with mostly men, which was fine, but it was nice to have, for a change, a woman as a boss, and she's now become one of my best friends. And I worked for a public company that was based here in Miami, New York Stock Exchange. That I continued on the M&A, merger and acquisition side, so continued to think as an investor, but within the corporate environment. And we sold the company, and then I wanted to stay in Miami. And I wanted to stay in Miami. I think it's important for, career-driven women out there. My decision to stay in Miami was not career-based, was personal. My now husband had moved to Miami, and I felt that, after moving from Chicago to Miami, I was not going to continue moving, forever. So I decided to stay here, and I had to pivot my career a little because early 2000s, if we think that the market sometimes is shallow here, early 2000s was even more. Yeah. And there were no M&A jobs or private equity for Latin America, at least, jobs. So I joined Visa, the payments company. Corporate career. I had different experiences there. It was a good journey. Focus on payments industry, which is a very unique industry, and now it's relevant because fintechs are, thriving. And I was lucky to do strategic alliances, business development, product development.
Excellent.
So, that I think prepared me for Endeavor. And I'm going to stop because I can continue talking.
I know Tyler wants to get a question.
But I know, I can see that he...
Well, you've seen a lot, like, in the last 20 years or so in Miami. So talk to me about, like, the Miami that you came to and the Miami that's now and the changes that have evolved over time.
That's a great question. As a person that was prepared and driven, looking for a job in Miami and wanted to stay, I knew by experience that it was not easy, right? So I think the evolution of Miami has been great, and that was one of my motivations and drives to launch Endeavor with my board. I knew about Endeavor, and I knew they wanted to develop, scale in the entrepreneurial community. And that was my drive. I thought it was perfect, right? Like my motivation, I always say my selfish drive, but was for my daughters, right? I have 3 daughters, one that's in London working, and then 2 little ones, 12 and 8. And I really want them to grow in a city with a lot of exposure to different experiences, as I grew up in Mexico City, right? So I think that, back to your question, seeing the evolution of Miami, I think it's grown amazingly. Maybe the entrepreneurial community through Knight Foundation and through the early start in 2010, probably 11, which were the first big movements. I think that it now you can see it really thriving. And I also see the corporate world also evolving here, right? And evolving in terms of talent and more people wanting to come here. So I feel we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go.
we talk a lot about what an investor would look for in an entrepreneur. What does a city like Miami need to grow an innovation ecosystem? What's that look like?
Well, Leanne is the expert, but I would say that to grow in innovation, you need you need different components, right? You need a thriving community, so companies that are growing, that bring talent, but you also need that talent is inclusive. I'm not gonna say diverse, and I think that things don't happen naturally necessarily. I think that there has to be work among, community leaders and, C-level people and founders to be purposeful about that inclusion. And it is clear, I think, throughout the years that inclusion and diversity drive innovation, right? I mean, the more diverse views you have, that's better for everyone. So I think we're in a great momentum to hopefully continue to make that happen.
And we've had so many conversations about inclusion over diversity. And I always think that if you focus on inclusion, diversity naturally happens. But if you focus on diversity, it's not guaranteed that inclusion will happen. And one of the things that you just said is that the leaders that are helping to create the scaffolding around the ecosystem have to be purposeful about it. Talk to us a little bit about some of the specific examples or specific strategies that you think or have seen that are effective in creating inclusive spaces. Because you've obviously, in launching Endeavor and working with so many companies, you've worked with diverse founders. Yeah. And so what are some of the specific ways that we can help make that happen?
I mean, I think there's not one rule fits all. I think personality drives your culture. But maybe using some examples of companies that are very diverse here in Miami, like, thinking about Everymundo or You Visit or, Wingcode founders, right? I mean, I can go on, Novo Payment, obviously, too. I think that we all have implicit bias and we need to be conscious about it, right? So as a leader, we need to be open to see different people join your team. I'm not going to say that it's perfect, right? Like, we tend to talk to the people that we like or sometimes look like us. So having the opportunity to listen to others, and purposeful, I mean, because, it's we've all seen the network effect, right? So I think network effect would be another example. You need to reach beyond your own network to find different people. And it's hard to do when you're running a business. I recently had a chat with Brian Brackeen, who came to the club to talk. And I thought, if you see his VC, it's open application, right? That's great. You don't need to be referred to him. Exactly. That he's committing to interview everyone or to look at everyone at least, right? So I think little examples like that go a long way. But I think reaching out beyond your network is the more effective one.
I think that's an important point that I was just reading on Instagram a post that was talking a lot about kind of racism and inequity and discrimination. And the takeaway was that the way to dismantle those inequities is relational. It's not always about the theory or the framework. It's really about intentionally understanding that that's relational work and that you're dealing with people. So I'd love for you to just share with us, you've had so many different roles and you have a great network in the community. I mean, personally, you were one of the first people I talked to when I was building Venture Cafe, and I was listening and I said, what does this community need? And you said, I'll be on the advisory committee, I'll be involved. And you were really relational about like developing a partnership. So what are some ways, or what are some organizations or people that you have recently kind of connected with and built relationships that maybe were outside of your traditional kind of circle?
Yeah, I mean, recently, I think my main focus has been on the programming for the HBS Club, which is, not necessarily what I was doing while I was running Endeavor, although I've been in the board for a while. But I think that even within the year off that I've taken professionally, I've always been very purposeful at thinking of the current times and reaching out to people, right? So I don't think, for example, with all the movement, anti-racial movement, right? I reach out to you, I reach out to Brian, I reach out to Felicia. I not necessarily see you all the time, but I know that you have you're hearing what the community needs, and then how can I make that relevant for our membership in this case at the HBS Club, right? So that's an example of things that I try to do, but I always been a collaborator. And other things that I've done is, like, for example, out of my network too, and out of my expertise, I love what Mariana Tencio is doing. I don't know if you know her, but she used to be at MSNBC, and she has a great Instagram account, and she's focusing on inspiring Latina women, right? So I've talked to her too to see how I can help, right? So things that I'm passionate about, and then where I find that there are assets that I can bring to the table, that's where I try to focus my relations. But I mostly do it for passion and for heart.
I think that's the only way.
So you mentioned using an open application as a way to be purposeful. What are some other ways that we can practically drive inclusion?
If I use the example of the entrepreneurial community, I think that there's a good effort of collaboration, but I think there's still different silos, maybe not consciously, but just because everyone is doing their own work. So, like Venture Cafe, right, that tries to convene everyone there for ideas. I mean, that's one example of community-based activities that can be leveraged. The other idea, I know several founders are meeting, have meetings or dinners or, round tables. I think the more you can include in terms of geography here in the specific case of Miami, and then also of backgrounds, I think that that will help. Because there's a lot to do.
I like that concept of like the inclusion of unusual suspects. So you have like the typical list of people are always there, but making sure to include folks that are not on the top 10 of who's who in tech and innovation. And so that brings me to the question, you have worked with a lot of companies. What are some companies that kind of just came across your radar that surprised you? You've reviewed a lot of companies through that Endeavor process. You're on 2 boards. Like, tell us about 1 or 2 examples of things that just kind of bubbled up out of nowhere and have really grown and scaled.
I think that I'm gonna talk about the entrepreneurs that are closer because that's my experience. But I was super happy that UBisit had an exit last year. That was like a good, check that's gonna start happening. It's hard to say that I was surprised because I always believe in people. So I think that, once I, like Nearpod and, Jackie Baumgarten with both Setter, Noble Payment has an amazing, I know Annabelle since my time at Visa, so the way she has grown is amazing. So, I think surprises you find everywhere. Like I'm gonna say, Julie Evans, who is the founder of Sustalytics. I love her background. It's a very early stage, but I not necessarily have experience in fashion, but what she's doing with technology to predict trends, so to reduce inventory and to be a more environmentally friendly industry, I think that's amazing. So she, I was super happy to be able to join her and hopefully help her scale. So it's a long, and open response because entrepreneurs never cease to surprise me, and I think it's hard to pick the ones that I think are like, wow, no, I really see great stories, very early stage and big ones, and also on the brick and mortar side, right? Especially through pandemic. I've seen, Pincho and Roger and my ceviche and Deliverling really tried to contribute.
Excellent.
Is it that time?
I think so. I know timer's a bit
time
off,
for
but
the lightning round.
Whew. Okay. Here's my first question. So, Laura, what risk are you happy that you took?
Most recently, 2 risks. The first one was to launch Endeavor when there was a question if the affiliate would work in Miami, because Endeavor was emerging market. So first U.S. affiliate, and it was a startup, and I loved that, and I loved the organization. I had a quite right. Second risk is stepping down from it. I've never stopped working, and I thought it was important to stop without having anything, already committed to. Not only for me, but I'm gonna say to any business leader that can take some time off, it's really important. But for my daughters too, right? They've always seen me like nonstop, and I really wanted to have that experience to be more present with them. So it's been a rewarding return.
Great sabbatical.
What is most important to you?
Most important to me, my family, and being able to fulfill my purpose, which means having impact in the community. So that's what drives me.
I have a twofer. The first one is if you could just define impact, because that is a very subjective term. So what does impact mean to you? And then maybe Tyler will indulge and let me ask my lightning round question.
So impact, maybe in a very easy definition, to me would be being able to change for the good, right? So impact to me can go from someone telling me, thanks to you, I was able to get here, as well as thanks to you, this industry is completely different, right? So the ability to influence change, but change that makes things better for everyone.
I love that definition. So my question is, what question would you ask a fortune teller?
I have so many questions. For me, I would be like, where can I fulfill my purpose?
Ooh, that's deep.
What is something new you recently tried and loved?
I recently tried and loved, exercising more frequently. Like when I've been working so much that it's hard, and now I do, I'm Peloton for sure. I'm gonna shout out to the brand, but like I do a lot of stuff on Peloton, different exercises. And then just 2 weeks ago, hiking.
Ooh, yes. Okay, so my last question is, what does this world need more of?
Empathy and people that care for each other.
It's a great answer.
Yeah.
Laura, how can people get in touch with you? Social media,
Yes.
all of the above.
I have a LinkedIn account, Laura Maydón. I have a Twitter account, Li Maydón, Maydon. And then you can easily find me also in Instagram. Easier, Gmail, lmaydon@gmail.com.
Excellent. Well, Laura, thank you for joining us. This has been a fun conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love the questions, and I'm super happy to be here.
Excellent.
Thank you for listening to Innovation City. If you like this episode, you can find more episodes at innovationcity.co or anywhere where you watch or listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.
This is where it all begins, so say